Welcome back for part 2 of the 2008 Acura MDX valve seat cutting. Also see links in the description for some of the products used in this video. Alright, so now that the seats have been cut, we're going to test the vacuum, make sure that the seats in the valves are sealing correctly against each other. So this is not going to be a definitive test, it's just going to give us an idea of how well we cut the seats and how well the valves are sealing. So I have this contraption here. I got this idea from several videos on YouTube. Since I didn't know how to make this, I had no idea how to make this, I just decided to watch a few videos and take some ideas from those videos and come up with something like this. Now, in order to test the vacuum, we need a vacuum pump. So that's what this is right here. This is a yellow jacket. It's the Bullet yellow jacket. Model number is 93603, 3CFM, and it's 2-stage. So this one I got on OfferUp for $100. I've seen these online for upwards of like $400 or $500. So that's a pretty good price. The one thing I did not notice is back here, the housing is cracked. But it doesn't affect the functionality of the pump though, so I'm good with that. So what this is composed of, you've got a hose going to the vacuum pump. We've got a number of adapters on here. And I've got a gauge right there. It goes up to 30 inches of mercury. We've got a ball valve down here. And then on this end, we've got a pad, as you can see right there, with some foam on it. And that's made out of plexiglass. So the only thing with having these all screwed together like this, these can come loose. So every time I run this, I make sure I tighten these down at every single joint before I run it. So I'll put links in the description below to all the parts that I use here. And I think everything that I use can be found on Amazon. Alright, so you can visualize what I'm doing. I've got the cylinder head bores all numbered from 1 through 12. So this is the front cylinder head. These are all the exhaust valve, and these are all the intake valves. On this side, we've got the exhaust port right there. So that's the one unique thing about this cylinder head is there's not, you can see on the opposite side for the intake, there's 3 ports, whereas back here for the exhaust, it's just the 1 port. So we're going to have to plug up these holes as we're testing each one of these valves. So I'm going to do each valve individually. So in order to do that, I've got some rubber stoppers here. These are, I think they're 1 inch on this side and 1 1/4 on this side. So if I put this in the hole here, it keeps that nice and airtight. So I've got 5 of these. We're going to do number 1 first here. And these I found at Home Depot. You can also get these online too. So I'll put links in the description below, like I said, to everything, just about everything I've used here. We need to cover the valve guides on this side. So I've got some covers there. Those are basically vacuum caps. And I think they are 3/8 of an inch on the inside diameter. That's what I used. Alright, since this is the front cylinder head, we also need to cover up the EGR right there, so we get a lot of air escaping out of that area there too. So I just put some duct tape over that. And this is no residue duct tape, so it will not leave a residue when I peel this off. That's by 3M. Alright, so I visited a local cylinder head shop just to get some advice, and they mentioned that 25 inches of mercury is the minimum that they like to see when they're checking vacuum. So I'm going to shoot for that. I'm not sure I'm going to hit that in all instances, but we're going to see what we get here. So I've got the number 1 exhaust valve right there. That corresponds with this hole here. See right there on the front. It says 1. I've also seen mention of putting like surgical tubing on the opposite side to act as a valve seal. I've tested this out, and honestly, I don't really think this is necessary. It doesn't really seem to make any difference at all. So I'm going to leave that out for now. And what we're going to do now is we're going to check this one cylinder, see what we get. You want to make sure that this is nice and clean. So maybe take some acetone or something and wipe this off. Maybe even clean your valve here. I think this one needs to be cleaned up before I test it, but that's probably what I would do, just wipe this all down and then test it that way. So I'll put this in here. It's number one. One thing I also saw that one person mentioned who actually rebuilds cylinder heads is when you drop this, you should hear it almost kind of bounce a little bit. That means you've got good contact pretty much all the way around the valve and the seat. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm just going to turn this on, then I'll show you what we get here. So I'm going to put the pad on right over here on the port, make sure it covers fully. Right up against there. I'm going to turn the pump on. Now I'll just flip this ball valve right there. So that's a little above 26, so that's pretty good. So 1 for 1 so far. One other thing we're going to want to do is time how long it takes to bleed off. So as soon as I turn the pump off, we've got about 6 feet of hose here. So I want to time how long it takes to bleed the air out of this cylinder, or out of this bore here. So I'm going to start it up again. We've got our pad on there. Okay, went all the way up to 26 again. I'll hit the start button and turn this off at the same time. We're just going to watch how long it takes to bleed all the way down to 0. And stop. Right, so 41 seconds to do that. I've read that 10 seconds is kind of the bottom, that's the lowest, the minimum you want to have. And I don't know how much hose or whatever they were using. So I would say 41 is pretty good. So 1 for 1 so far. We'll continue on and do the rest of them here too. Alright, so I'm primarily focused on the exhaust side. Intake side, I've done some checking already off camera. They look really good. So I'll do this real quick for you so you can see it. This is number 9 and number 10. So right here and here. Right, so it's 9 and 10. We're just worried about this port, making sure this is covered. We don't need to worry about anything else on this side. So put the pad over that. Try to get that in there. Hopefully that's covered. We'll see in a second. And I'll turn this on. Yeah. I still think this might be a little off, but we got around 27 on that one. So intake side, I'm not worried about at all. See the leak down too. Decent. So we could lap these valves. We do have good contact right now, but we could lap them to get even better sealing where the leak down is a lot slower. But I think I'm going to leave that alone. We'll see. All right, on to the rear cylinder head where all sorts of issues were revealed. All right, so we're on to number 17 now. Put this on here. Turn this on. Flip this over. That looks terrible. That looks like 19 on that one. So we'll turn this off. So we got about 5 seconds of leak down on this one at 19 inches of mercury. That is terrible. So we've got some work to do here. All right, so we're on to the last one, number 18. So far we have failed miserably here. So got that on there. And Start this up. That over. We're going to call that 20. Again, not good. About 5 seconds of leak down also. So yeah, we've got some work to do. So let's talk real quick about why our numbers are so bad in this cylinder head as opposed to the other one. The reason for that is I got a little bit lazy mentally and tried to rush through this one because the other one took so long. So you're going to have to be really patient if you're doing especially 12 valves like I'm doing here. You have to be very, very patient with this and just take your time, walk through all the steps. All right, so I'm going to show you what I think is going on with number 13. So I've got some Dichem blue here. So spread this around, let that dry. All right, so we've got our Dichem blue in there. I'm going to put the pilot in now. Make sure that's nice and straight. Press down. I'm going to spray this. Just lightly missed it. That helps significantly to reduce the chatter. It cuts very smoothly with the cutting fluid. I'm going to put on a 30-degree cutter. I'm just going to run this around by hand. So I'll put that on there like that. Okay. And I'm going to bring you in close so you can see what's going on now. All right, so here is number 13 that I just cut with a 30-degree cutter. And as you can see, I've got good contact here. Not so good down here. It's very evident that I was applying too much pressure, biasing towards the top part of the seat and minimally cutting the lower part of the seat. Even though the 45-degree angle is the contact area of the valve seat and valve face, the importance of a properly cut 30-degree angle, which I call the shelf of the valve, became apparent. I re-examined all the valves by tweaking the Sharpie marker lapping technique. Here's an example from cylinder number 4. Alright, so here's all I'm doing. I'm putting the valve in like this. I got you kind of close up there, sorry about that. So this is our line right there at the top. Then I'm just going to lap this. And all I want this line to do is go from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I don't want it going past into this area over here. I just want to stay right in here. So I'm doing this with my fingers more or less. I just kind of periodically pull the valve out and take a look. See, there's a patch there and a patch there. Hopefully those will both go away. Okay, pull it out. And the one at the top is almost gone, as you can see there. And this one down here at the bottom is still there. So we could hit this one more time with the 45. So I am starting to see a little bit of a line for the 30 also. So we brought this down a little bit. So I may go with the 30 one more time and then also hit it with the 45, and that should take care of this. Okay, so I just hit it with the 30. I'm going to go with the 45 to finish this off. I was going to go with the 60, but I think I'm just going to leave the 60 out of this one here. I think our seat looks pretty good, so I don't need the 60 anymore. So I'm going to spray this on. Do our 45 very lightly on the 45. And as you see, I'm using 2 thumbs, and I'm barely even touching it. Wipe this off. Okay, and we are going to do the same thing we just did. So I'm going to set up for that, and we'll check again to make sure we have good contact. Okay, pull that out. Yep, all gone. Perfect. So now, the one concern I have is the width of our seat here. It's a little bit wide. So I think I'm going to have to go back over this with the 60 and the 30. The 60 to kind of narrow this up a little bit, and then the 30 to drop it down. I have to do that very, very cautiously though, because that'll basically destroy our seat here if I'm not careful. So we can take a measurement to check here. And this one is, if I measure down here, it looks like around 154. So we're right on the border there. So we could do that, just kind of clean this up just very, very cautiously with the 60 and the 30, and then finish it off with the 45. That's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to be very, very careful with that though. Alright, so surprisingly, this is number 1, which was around 26 inches of mercury if I remember correctly. You can see right there. So there's the top, right there where that mark is. If I flip this over, a little bit of material left. So looks like the width is not bad. Actually, the width is not bad at all. In this instance, the seat width is perfect, and the 2 black rings are consistent all the way around the valve face. So I just lightly clean up the seat with the 45-degree cutter. Alright, so I've got to take some drastic measures, it appears, on this particular cylinder bore, because I've got the 45 on here, and if you look in here, we are not concentric at all. We've got a lot of it out up here, it looks like. We've got this little shadow area right down in this area, kind of in this little quadrant. So what I am doing now is I've got the 45 right here. Let's see, there's the 45, put that on there. So I've got this Hitachi screw gun right here with a 13mm socket. And I'm just putting it on low speed. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I would be here forever doing it by hand. So like I said, this tool is very light duty. I'm not putting any pressure on at all, and I'm just letting it spin. So you notice it looks like it's kind of rotating like this. That's the actual socket doing that. That's not the bit that's doing it. Here are the vacuum and leak down numbers after making corrections. Unfortunately, I ran out of seat material before I could correct seats 6, 17, and 18, so they had to be replaced. The other bores sealed to 25 inches of mercury or greater, with good seat to valve face contact. The leak down numbers needed some improvement though. I decided to lap the valves with fine lapping compounds to obtain better seals. Alright, so the lapping compounds we're going to use, we've got some 400 here. This is Goodson, really high quality stuff. And then we got 800. So I'm staying very fine. This is just a finishing step. I'm not trying to lap these valves to contour them or anything. I just want to make sure they seal really well. Alright, so here's the stick I'm going to use. The sizing is really weird. I have one that's larger, but it's too big for the valve. And then this one you can see is kind of small. So it should work for us though. And all we're going to do basically is just kind of do like we're starting a fire. So you've probably seen this a million times by some other, some other YouTubers or someone else who does valve work. It's really not that hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put some lapping compound, some of the 400. I'm just going to put a tiny bit. I'm not going to use very much of this at all. It's actually probably too much. So that's actually too much right there. It's going to kind of coat the face of the valve. Just kind of touching it lightly. You really don't need very much of this stuff from what I've experienced. And honestly, this stuff gets everywhere. So the less you use, the better, I would say. All right, so that's coated. I'm going to drop this in here. Okay. Just gonna grab the stick, put that on like that, and then just you just have to listen for it. You can kind of hear as it's almost done. It gets a little bit lighter in tone. Okay, I'm going to stop there, pull this out, wipe it off. And it's dull around the full face of the valve. Wipe this out. Now, what happens too with this lapping compound, if you're not careful, it can get in the valve guide. So like I said, once I'm finished doing all this, I'm going to rewash the cylinder head. I'm going to wash both cylinder heads all over again. And make sure I use some brushes, some wire brushes to get down in the valve guides. And I'll get some acetone, wipe this off, wipe the valve off, and then we'll check the vacuum. Alright, so a little bit of acetone. So as you can see there, we've got some residue from the lapping compound. This stuff here, that's just something from inside the bore, it looks like. So yeah, I'm going to have to definitely wash this again. Alright, so we'll put this in here, and we'll check the vacuum. Here are the vacuum and leak down numbers after seats 6, 17, and 18 were replaced and the valves were lapped. All valves, including the intake valves, achieved a vacuum of 28 inches of mercury or better, and all valves were well above the 30-second leak down minimum for which I was shooting. Here are the final valve stem heights and seat widths. All were within spec except for the out-of-spec seat widths in bores 6, 17, and 18. Instead of trying to correct them, I felt it best to just leave them because they weren't close enough to the service limit. Alright, so there you have it. There's cutting the valve seats in the 2008 Acura MDX cylinder heads. And as you saw here, I had a couple minor issues to overcome. Unfortunately, 3 of the valve seats had to be replaced at a machine shop. So that's something you'll have to be very cautious of if you're going to do this job. Make sure you're constantly checking. Also, make sure you go really slow, take your time with this, apply light pressure, and everything should turn out okay. So hopefully this information was helpful, and thanks for watching.